Okay, well, I think it's time to get the space underway. For those of you who don't know, I'm Mav. I do marketing and community for Rocket Pool. Today's call, we of course have a guest on, as Ken's mentioned, and we'll be kind of talking about, I guess, four different areas. First of all, Ken will help to host a toy from Cega to talk about a new DeFi product that they have available that includes RPL. Then we'll hopefully get a few insights from Ken about his time in Austin at Permissionless, representing the protocol there, including speaking on a panel. I'll also share a little bit about Singapore, although if you joined the last community call, there may be a couple of bits and pieces that kind of overlap. Since then, we have been attending a couple more events, so there is a little bit more news to share. And then, of course, part four, we will go through some of the latest protocol news. If you don't know who Ken is one of the rocket scientists, very deep understanding of the Rocket Pool protocol, helped to contribute research towards the development of Rocket Pool, and is also responsible for running the ODAO node for the rocket scientists. With that out of the way, I'll pass over to you, Ken, to host the call.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mav. I'm looking forward to it and kind of listening to seeing what the team is up to. But to start us off here, we have a toy from Cega. Cega is a decentralized exotic derivatives protocol that builds on structured products called vaults that provide high fixed yields and downside protection for investors using option strategies. And so hopefully to break all that down to us and explain it a little bit more, welcome very much, Toy.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. It's clear that you took a look at a lot of our documents and appreciate that very much. To everyone who's listening to the call right now and then maybe a bit later for like the recording, Cega is a DeFi options protocol that offers structured investments. We do USDC staking with USDC yield only. Underneath the hood, we run something called exotic option strategies. We created the first smart contracts that handle these types of conditional option strategies. So all of your strategies are principal protected. And then with your USDC deposit, we have APYs of anywhere from 8% to 160%. So yeah, super excited for our new product featuring RPL that just came out. If anyone is interested in checking us out, it's on Cega.fi.
Yeah, maybe we could break that down into a couple of things. Maybe just for the very beginning here, can you maybe talk a little bit about Sega's history and how it formed, and then after that, a little bit about what those products are that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sega's history dates back to around 2 years ago, which I guess in DeFi history is quite long at this point. My background is in options trading, and I realized that in the DeFi summer of 2020, there were a lot of issues within the ecosystem. Primarily, I saw some issues with product innovation. Back then, everyone was just forking each other and deploying on different chains. There was a lack of real high yields or people kind of creating really new and innovative products. So I wanted to create something that was brand new in the ecosystem. And then the second was regarding on-chain liquidity. There were a lot of issues with just a lack of people making markets on-chain, especially in the derivatives section. So I was thinking about, what are some instruments that could really accelerate the liquidity in the market? And then the last thing was regarding just having been in the traditional derivatives trading space, I understood how costly the operations were. And so the idea of an autonomous executable contract was very enticing. And so I wrote a white paper talking about the value of having exotic options on smart contracts, because an exotic option allows you to flexibly structure any kind of views you want in the market. You can create very creative products. And then you can also drive on-chain liquidity, because if you trade exotic derivatives, the amount of hedging required would really accelerate the liquidity in vanilla options, perpetual futures, as well as the spot market. And then lastly, it cuts a lot of the traditional operational hassle by executing everything autonomously. And I think that white paper ended up getting circulated. I got some fundings from venture capitals, and yeah, we've been chugging along for the last 2 years. We're number one in terms of volume on certain chains. We're uh, usually around number two to number four across all chains. We're currently live on Arbitrum, Ethereum, and Solana. Um, and yeah, that's the history of Cega. And in terms of how our product works, we currently have one very traditional exotic option strategy, and it's called a fixed coupon note. So, as the name suggests, it pays out a coupon. So, it pays out a yield to you every single day. And the way we structure this is through having two exotic option categories or strategies. One is called a basket option, where you're actually combining the underlying movement of a various number of tokens, and then that really boosts your APY. But then we also add this section called principal protection. So we have something called a barrier that basically helps protect your USDC from any market movements for anywhere from 30% to 90% of the market movement. And so, that might be a bit hard to imagine. So, an example of our most popular strategy, for instance, is that as a user, you're staking, say, 10,000 USDC. You are betting that in the next 27 days, neither BTC nor ETH will fall more than 50%. And in return, you get a 15% APY on your 10,000 USDC. So at the end of the year, you'll get 1,500 USDC on top of what you've staked. As long as BTC and ETH don't fall more than 50% in 27-day cycles. And the chance of that happening is like 0.4%. So the Sharpe ratio, which is the amount of reward you're getting to the risk, is incredibly good for our products.
Well, thank you very much for that kind of explanation. Now, I want to kind of explore a couple of other things, and I think maybe to kind of help the community understand it, maybe I'll skip the kind of questions a little bit here and get to a little bit one farther down the list, which is this new e-stakers vault. Can you explain that and how that vault works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're super excited to announce our ETH Stakers Vault like a couple of weeks ago. And the reason why I'm on this call today is because the ETH Stakers Vault actually features RPL. So the ETH Stakers Vault is a strategy where, as a user, if you're staking onto this strategy, you are betting that in the next 27 days, neither RPL, LDO, or STETH will fall more than 50%. And in return, you can get up to 72% APY currently. So that means if you're staking 10,000 USDC today, in 1 year's time, you could be getting 7,200 USDC on top of the 10,000 USDC that you staked, as long as LDO, RPL, and STETH does not go below 50% in a 27-day cycle.
And if I'm following kind of the product design, it's actually USDC. That's the collateral that I deposit to purchase into the vault, but it's pegged or based off the price of the RPL token as well as the LDO and the STE token. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Okay, excellent. And you mentioned that you announced it just recently. Is it already kind of live and available?
Yes, if you go to Cega.fi right now, you can launch the app and stake on eStakers Vault. It's live on Ethereum and Arbitrum. So, for both of those chains, you can stake from just one USDC to try it out.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about maybe the safety and security of the audits. What has Cega done in terms of auditing its protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. So for any code that's deployed on Sega, we actually go through double auditing, and we're audited by both AutoSec and Zelic, who are some of the top auditors in the space. When we were choosing auditors, we actually went and asked every auditor who they would recommend if we weren't going with them. And then we tallied all of that up. We also asked some protocols that we're like good friends with, and that also does like DeFi derivatives. And then we ended up with Zelic and OtterSec. They're they review every one of our smart contract updates, no matter how small. So nothing gets pushed out without an audit. Their reports are public, and if you look at any of the audit reports for Sega, we've never had a critical issue. Our review has always mentioned that our team is quite high quality and quite knowledgeable. So that's something we're really proud of. And security is our utmost priority. So if you look at Sega's news in the past, we've actually survived many different events and seasons like throughout DeFi. So we're definitely known as a very steady and sturdy protocol.
Oh, interesting. And then I guess one question that I had in your previous comment about the actual tokens that you use for that staking derivatives vault there, or options vault, why just STETH? Do you ever consider adding rETH to it, which is our the Rocket Pool's liquid staked ETH, as well as our native protocol token, the RPL token?
Oh, absolutely. So this was actually a really interesting point. And maybe it'll get slightly technical, but for a lot of these products, the APY, the pricing comes from the correlation between the underlying names of the baskets. And so the correlation between STETH and rETH was incredibly high. And if the correlation is incredibly high, it actually makes the APY lower. And so,
Hmm.
it was kind of a decision of, okay, well, now we have to pick one. And then we asked market makers, they hedge these positions. They would, and they basically mentioned, it doesn't really matter. Like they could be hedging this position with rETH, they could be hedging this position with STETH. But then if we were to just choose, they just basically picked, purely on like the existing market volume. But I think in terms of tech, there are differences, and we're definitely, a big fan of both services. And we also want to continue building with new strategies and new collaterals down the line that includes collaterals like rETH.
Oh, interesting. Are there any kind of unique selling points to Sega, or anything that makes it particularly unique in this arena?
Yeah, for sure. So I think Sega is the first protocol that created smart contract exotic options to begin with. And for Sega's staking strategies, we actually probably have the best Sharpe ratio in all of DeFi, which is the amount of returns you get for the risk that you take. So it's really unique in a sense that, our products are staking structured investment strategies that creates really good real yields that are on USDC that has a really good risk reward rate. So that in itself is a huge differentiator, but the tech is also innovative and quite new, which is because of this whole exotic options innovation. And what's really cool is, it's really hard to launch exotic options without a professional background in exotics. There's a lot of mathematical intricacies and pricing techniques that are involved in actually structuring something with exotic options, pricing something with exotic options, and launching. And so, at Sega, we're constantly trying to create this new product. We're always trying to serve our users and give them the best yields. So I think, that really makes us special. And the people who have used us have tended to stay on our protocol. So I think our engagement rate really shows like the tenacity and like the value of our products.
Interesting. And then let me just, so I'm kind of following along and our community members are following along. I think one of the things that happens, unfortunately, a lot in DeFi is we use some similar words for different meanings, right? And one of those words, unfortunately, I think is staking, right? To many of the folks listening to our community call, we use the term staking to basically mean validation as an Ethereum node, meaning actually placing some of our Ethereum and our liquid staking participants Ethereum on a node, a piece of computer hardware, a validator, and then attesting to the state, the chain head and source and target of Ethereum, in an ideal to reach consensus and security of the protocol. And of course, earning some rewards at the time that some of our collateral is at risk. If we incorrectly vote, we double attest or surround vote or miss a block proposal, etc. But I believe you're using the term in terms of just locking up an asset for a period of time. Is that correct? Is that what staking means in your description?
Yeah, so staking in Sega would mean locking your USDC into a Sega smart contract. So I think in the very traditional form of staking, it's what you mentioned, Ken, about validating and making sure to validate the correct transactions, potentially getting slashed. I think there are different ways to make yields in the market. And I think generally, there's an association with staking and creating a yield as like a benefit. But I think the middle process is quite different between Rocket Pool and Sega.
Yeah. So let me ask kind of just your kind of opinion about the future of staking, and I'll kind of ask it both ways. Staking in terms of node validation. I don't know if that's something you have an opinion on, and but also staking, as you said, tying up your asset in a smart contract for some period of time in a kind of financial position or contract.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think staking is, a really interesting concept, and maybe I can address it from both the first part as like staking as like a node validation, and then the second part staking as kind of like a financial instrument with like real returns. In terms of like node validation, I'm really excited about the whole restaking field that is currently popping up, and so how to reallocate like uh your staked tokens like rETH into say using like a different blockchain and validating transactions there. And I think that would really help scale a lot of applications and create like a much better cost of operation for a lot of like blockchain apps. And that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to. And I think the second, and also I think, you know, just the traditional staking validation rates will probably go down. And so I'm wondering, like, if there will be any other incentives to increase the returns for stakers. That's like the one, like, I think problem space that I am like lightly following. And then the second part regarding staking to gain like returns, I think the days of staking and getting like inflationary like native token rewards or staking and like having to lock up for like 24 months, I think those days are definitely over. I think V tokenomics is also basically regarded as a Ponzi scheme at this point, and I think there is an incredibly high demand for staking as like a financial return to be associated with like real world assets and real yields. So I think if you're doing a Delta One staking, which is just staking into a like just like an asset class or like a single token, I think the value of that asset class or token needs to be associated with something in the real world, like a U.S. Treasury bill. I think if you are looking for something that does not necessarily have a real world asset exposure, then I think it requires something like derivative strategies in order to generate some level of like real returns from volatility or any sort of price movements. And I think there's going to be an increase in these types of real world asset like staking protocols, as well as DeFi derivatives protocol staking protocols that are going to run actually good strategies, not the kind of strategies where like you could lose your principal if the market moves 5%, but you're actually making you're making like a decent yield with like principal protection.
Okay, interesting. We have our first question kind of from the audience here that asks, where do you source your prices from? Do you get them from an exchange, or is there an on-chain oracle that you use?
Yeah, for sure. So there's two levels for that. All of our positions are auctioned off to institutional market makers. So those that some of you probably have heard of before, the QCPs, Bastion Tradings of the world. And then we deal with many, many market makers. And then when we run the auction, we also have um, a, a minimum pricing that is kind of created by this entity called Trasmobian, which is a exotic options market maker that was incubated by Sega. And this minimum pricing is based on, a very strong pricing mechanism. We have an internal Monte Carlo pricer, which is like the pricer that is required for exotic options pricing. And this basically forbids market makers from colluding or giving any bad prices. So we have this auction that happens every single week, and then we make sure that the pricing is always good.
Okay, interesting. What other future plans do you have for Sega?
Yeah, it's super exciting things are coming up for Sega in the next couple of months. I think the first one I mentioned, maybe I hinted at it a bit earlier, is that we're going to be doing like alternative asset staking, so alternative collateralization. Right now, we only accept USDC, and we're only getting paid out in USDC, but we're thinking about allowing for other types of asset to be staked that's also paid out in the value of the other asset. And so, like a really quick example would be like USDT, but then we can also allow for, say, Ethereum staking with Ethereum payouts. So those are the types of product that we're creating. So alternative collateralization, alternative asset staking. And then the second part is we're also launching a brand new exotic options strategy. So our current investment strategies are all called fixed coupon notes that pays out a yield every single day with principal protection. We're actually creating something with a very interesting return profile. Something like, you're staking your USDC, you get a guaranteed 20% yield, but if the value of Ethereum, say, goes below 1500, then all your USDC plus your yield gets converted to Ethereum. So you're still long Ethereum at the end. Everything gets paid out in Ethereum. You just you get a guaranteed 20% yield that could get converted to Ethereum at a certain price point. So that's the kind of strategy that we're looking to launch in like the next couple of months as well. Then lastly, we're doing a pretty big contractual update. So we're really excited to talk about some of the more like modular aspects of the contract, which is more on the technical side. So if anyone is interested in hearing more, we can definitely have a separate conversation on either Discord or Twitter.
Yeah, let me just ask one follow-up question on that interesting roadmap ahead in which you would consider other collateral types. You mentioned Ethereum as being one of the collateral types. Have you thought of accepting a staked Ethereum like rETH as part of that collateral?
We are definitely thinking about it. But yeah, I don't want to be I don't want to be announcing way too many things because they are coming out in like the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, it just seemed like an obvious next step to me here, but But you did mention about if people want to get in more into the details and the technicals, how can they ask some follow-up questions and learn more about the protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're interested in following more about Sega, our Twitter is probably the easiest place to go. It's Sega underscore FI. Um, and then, yeah, you can also follow me. I retweet things from Sega a lot. If you're active on Discord, Sega's Discord is discord.gg/Sega, CEGA. So you can really check us out anywhere. If you go to our website, sega.fi, we have documentations and we also have our Medium blog post. Um, and yeah, like, perhaps all of you here have a huge bag of staked Ethereum. We may or may not be launching some exciting new staked Ethereum products as well. So definitely check us out, and we'd be super excited to answer any of your questions. If you use our product and have any feedback, we're always super welcome for user feedback as well.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And Atoy, is there anything else that you feel it's important for the Rocket Pool community to know about either you or the protocol here that we haven't had a chance to explore yet or ask you the question of?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, first of all, thank you for having me today. It's been a pleasure to chat and to share about Sega with like such a great community. Um, again, if you're interested in learning more about exotic options, or you want to just understand, say, the different pockets of DeFi derivatives, we have the best DeFi derivatives team in like the entire crypto ecosystem. We're also always happy to do just like very high level options 101, like education and awareness building. If there's any questions, like it doesn't have to be about our product, please feel free to ask me or ask anyone from the Sega team on Discord or Twitter.
Oh, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure having you come and explain a little bit more about the protocol. And I'm actually kind of very interested in not only learning about the existing vaults that you have, including the staking one, but I'll definitely be following the team there to see what comes next out of you in the next couple of weeks here. It sounds very promising.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Please do let us know if you have any thoughts on our website or our products. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't see any further questions in our trading channel or anybody with their hand raised up here on the call. But if anybody does have a question, just feel free to step forward here and we can bring you up on stage. One last question for you, Toy. Any plans on attending either DevConnect coming up here in Istanbul or any future conferences like ETH Denver on the horizon for the team?
Yeah, definitely. So our head of BD, Adam, will be at DevConnect, and then we will also be at Mainnet, or we are at Mainnet this week. Not me, but my co-founder Winston is. And then yes, we should be at ETH Denver next year. So hopefully we can connect in real life there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to meeting some of the folks from the team.
Awesome.
All right. Well, you're very much welcome to stay on for the remainder of today's call where we talk about all things Rocket Pool. But it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
And Mav, I think we're back to you now.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Yes. And so where are you?
So I'm still in Singapore. Lang is probably about to make his way out to the airport to fly back. Everyone else headed back last week, so I'll be the last one standing, and I fly out tomorrow. Main reason for that is just because the way the flights ended up working, it was a lot cheaper. But I also don't mind staying on an extra day in Singapore. Probably mentioned it before, maybe on the last call. I used to live here a little while ago, and it's my first time back for maybe 4 or so years, at least certainly after COVID. So it was great to be back. A little on the warm and humid side, which I'm not really familiar with anymore. But yeah, it's been a very busy 2 weeks. So looking forward to kind of sharing a part two of the Singapore update.
Yeah, well, why don't we start there? I was able to listen into the recorded call. It was way too early my time to listen to it live, but I caught the story of, I think, the team there. Maybe it was East Singapore, where Vitalik had stopped by the booth, but unfortunately, you and Langers had stepped away, and it sounds like it was maybe quite the opportunity there. And then I think the call was kind of saying that you guys were off to token 2049, but maybe I'm missing where the story left off or not. But maybe tell us a little bit about what it was like, kind of what was the vibe, what was the conference like, what were your takeaways, and then I'll ask you some questions about the team there and the talks. But tell us what you know.
Yeah, so last call, that was halfway through token 2049. So since then, we've had day two of that event, which, to be honest, was much like day one, as you might expect. And then we had a small meetup with Ethereum Malaysia, Ethereum Kuala Lumpur, over the weekend, and just recently Digital Asset Week. So between, how many events is that? Four.
Or
It's really run through the spectrum from small, locally developed community events through to sitting next to senior VPs from some of the world's biggest banks and hearing them talk about what they're doing in, I guess you could call it a related space in terms of their views and thoughts on distributed ledger technology. So yeah, a fascinating 2 weeks looking at kind of what's going on from all aspects. So to jump back to token 2049, this may be repeating a little bit of the last call, but that was a lot more active than I expected in terms of the number and the type of attendees. There were a large variety of different projects and protocols in attendance. To be honest, I think myself, like a lot of the team, we didn't necessarily spend a whole lot of time looking through the various booths and the presentations, although it was quite eye-opening to walk around.
yeah, and help us go. I've seen a couple of the videos, but is it like, paint the scale? Was it as busy as ETH Denver? Bigger than ETH Denver? Is it multi-chain? What were the attendees? Were they corporate finance people in suits? Like, paint the picture for us here.
Yeah, so if you imagine ETH Denver, but I guess you could say in a slightly more upmarket venue rather than the kind of concrete.
Horse ball, yeah.
Yeah, the concrete floored, like, back of house rodeo arena that we had.
Yeah.
So this is yeah, a lot flashier in typical Singapore style. It was very well organized. Apparently there was, I think it was like the Southeast Asia Seafood Conference on the main floor. So we took second place to them, and we're spread over like floors 3 and 4 of the Marina Bay Sands Convention Center, which is a pretty good venue. A lot of the booths were, I would say they were quite like flashy, well designed. There was a lot of kind of marketing and promotional dollars that had gone into setting this all up. So you'd have projects with DJs at their booths and handing out coffee and bubble tea and all sorts of things, and people wandering around in costumes. So it was, I guess you could describe it as ETH Denver on steroids a little bit. Yeah,
So did that give you some ideals for ETH Denver? Like, we should be approaching the GMC for a little bit better booth and display, or like, what are you thinking as kind of our community manager? Do we have to scale it up a little bit for ETH Denver, or just hang with the vibe of ETH Denver?
I think we can build on some of the stuff we've done. We did earlier in the year, and yeah, do something a little bit maybe bigger and better. But between now and then, there's also Istanbul to sort out, which is coming very soon in less
Very.
than 2 months. So just kind of like Singapore, we do have to get through and sort the flights, hotels, and sponsorship and the attendance there. So yeah, Edinburgh is definitely at the back of my mind, but
Yeah,
it'd be
yeah.
good to
Okay, well,
get through Istanbul first.
let me keep you back on Token 2049. Okay, you were saying it's a upscale booth, very professional, kind of on steroids, very professional booths, some type of an attraction gimmick to get people into the booths. But what else was there? Like the venue, the speakers, or what did the team do? Was it business development?
Yeah, so a lot of business development, meeting with other attendees. So that side of things was very valuable. Actually, while I haven't been, maybe some of these, is it Comic Con or some of these other kind of gaming related conventions, if you've ever been to one of them, that's kind of what I imagine, like 2049 is what I imagine that would be kind of like. So it did have that vibe to it. There were a few, like, I guess, GameFi projects there. Lots of flashing lights. So yeah, it was a very different vibe to East Singapore, that's for sure. But yes, it was a good opportunity for us being so close to Australia, to have everyone else that we talk to fly in. So, putting faces to names, chatting in real life, which is always going to be easier than multiple Zoom calls, and incredibly productive. A lot of follow-up work to do. And yeah, there were side events, networking, really a really productive trip, and I think that's why, as I mentioned at the start, the not even 2 weeks did feel like a very long time.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, and then you had kind of the concluding events right after Token 2049. There was an ETH meetup in Malaysia.
Yeah, so the story with that one is, for whatever reason, the Singapore events have been scheduled around the time of the Formula One, which here is a night race and it is a street race. So they close off a large chunk of downtown Singapore just before the race starts, a couple of days before. Um, so it makes it a little bit tricky to kind of get around over that weekend. And it also means that the hotel prices are 5 times plus what you might usually pay. So the original thought process was, well, Langus and I wanted to stay on for Digital Asset Week. In between was the F1. It's better to get out of Singapore during that period. And there, are a couple of options elsewhere where, from the cost of flights, which are pretty cheap in this part of the world, you can, grab some accommodation there and save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So that's what we did. Popped over to KL, Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, which is about an hour's flight or slightly less. And while we were there, Langus coordinated with the local kind of Ethereum community for us to head along to one of their monthly meetups. So a bit of a replay of some of the presenting work that Langus did in Singapore, sharing about what Rocket Pool is, what we're doing, and then some time to chat with the community afterwards. And it was a pretty good turnout, I guess maybe 30 or so people. There are a couple of photos floating around on Twitter, but yeah, it was always, great to meet an Ethereum group from a different country and kind of hear about what they're doing. I think they have their version of Ethereum Singapore, like the local, I think it's the inaugural local event for Malaysia, and that's happening in about a month or two. Unfortunately, we won't be able to attend, but if anyone is in that part of the world, might be worth looking into and heading along to.
Okay. And so then he returned back to Singapore for I think you said it was Blockchain Week.
Digital Assets Week.
Digital Assets
Singapore. Yeah,
Okay,
so there are a
and
few of
tell us,
these around the world. One in London, one in somewhere in California, I think San Francisco, and then just gone in Singapore. So um, honestly, I think the best way to describe, what it's about, is to check out the agenda, which is online. A very interesting scroll through. The website is daweek.org/Singapore. And if you go to that page and scroll down, you'll see the speakers and the agenda draft. And there's some fascinating panels and discussions with some pretty senior people in some of the world's biggest banks. So to have, a representative from HSBC to sit down on a panel and talk about whether the bank should be using private or public, private, i.e. like permissioned versus a public permissionless chain like Ethereum to build on. I was, to be honest, a little bit blown away that was even a topic that they might be discussing. So a lot of my takeaway is that a lot of these banks and financial institutions, they do have, if not departments, then kind of project groups with people who are quite well versed in the world of blockchain technology, and of course, probably in most cases, approaching it from a little different angle than most of us would, especially here in Rocket Pool, just in terms of the priorities and being a registered entity. Obviously, they have, as a financial entity, they have other priorities. But for a representative to be able to engage in that kind of discussion and to be knowledgeable about the topic to that degree, and to hear about like the resources that they have at their disposal and what they're working on, I was honestly quite surprised. And that was also another great networking opportunity. It was the full range of attendees, not just banks. There was a representative from the local government, Monetary Authority of Singapore. There were custodians. There were kind of entities like the banks that originated from the more traditional side and we're looking to move towards the crypto world, or at least the increase and start to use blockchain technology. And then other companies that were starting out, as crypto native and moving into this world of traditional finance. So this was mostly, I think, an educational opportunity for us to see how the rest of the much wider financial industry is approaching this, and some of their thoughts on Ethereum and Ethereum staking. But yeah, definitely a worthwhile event to stay on for. I don't think we're going to be able to make the other digital asset weeks, but from what I've heard, they are worth going along to if you're free and there's one of them in your part of the world. Might be worth seeing if you can head along.
interesting. And what was kind of your take? Did you leave this thing being very positive that the institutions are on the sideline and coming, or was it a very bearish attitude? What was kind of your takeaway? Were you optimistic or hopeless?
Well, for me, going in with little / kind of bearish expectations, again, to have like a senior person from a major bank kind of talking openly about blockchain technology was incredibly optimistic to me. So yeah, I did not appreciate how kind of far along the path some of these banks were. It is still very much early days, and I guess I could draw some parallels to my time in the aviation industry. In both cases, someone used the term of like an oil tanker because of the kind of risk considerations, the regulatory concerns. These entities don't change very fast. They don't move quickly. But once they do start moving, you get the other side of an oil tanker that it just kind of barrels along, and it's hard to stop. So I think it's one of these things where there's momentum building slowly in the background, and at some point it's likely to be a catalyst. From the sounds of things, there are ways that that a blockchain can kind of help some of these institutions to increase the efficiency, create new opportunities. So I don't know what form it will take or when it will happen, but it sounds like something that is inevitable. A couple of the people that I talked to were kind of looking forward to looking ahead to the future and talking about budgets and development pathways, and it sounded like there may have been over the past few years a period of consolidation for some banks, but they're then looking forward to like a period of growth, expansion, and kind of investing in this area. So yeah, for me, very optimistic. It'll be interesting to see in the next 1-2 years to hopefully attend again and see how some of these opinions have changed.
Yeah, interesting. It seems like there was just a tremendous amount of conferences recently, right? I mean, I guess the other one that was going on was Masari's mainnet on there. What do you know of that? Now, no team member was able to attend, but what have you heard from that?
Yeah, so originally the plan, even before Singapore, was that we were considering mainnet in New York, and then I think kind of brought down to earth by remembering how far away it is from Singapore. Even just this trip, while it's relatively close to Australia, each day that you kind of take out puts you more and more behind on your kind of day-to-day tasks. So to just go that little bit extra up to New York, and then obviously with some additional costs involved with flights. And then also, to be honest, I don't think we had appreciated the scale of what was happening in Singapore. And there did seem to be, I think, both from us talking and from others, a bit of a shift away from the US towards Asia, probably due to the fact that a lot of the time, around the time that most people were booking Singapore, again, we were a little bit late, but we got there in the end. There were, these fresh regulatory concerns. I think this was around the time some of those lawsuits were being dropped against or launched against Coinbase and co. So that may have been something to do with it. In any case, put it this way: from the time I managed to stay to have a look at what was happening on Twitter, there's a lot of content about Singapore. Not necessarily specific events. Certainly, token kind of featured more prominently, but it just seemed that everyone was in Singapore, talking about Singapore, talking about Asia. By comparison, I haven't seen a whole lot more coverage about the US events in Texas, in New York. So yeah, we were not in New York. From what I heard, it was a little bit quieter than people expected. I'm not sure if there was anyone in the community who were around or heard anything similar. But from the sounds of things from your time in Texas, Ken, that may be a similar theme there.
Yeah, no, I was going to just share that exact same thing, So for those that don't know, I had a chance to represent the PDAO and Rocket Pool on a panel hosted at the Permissionless Conference. The Permissionless Conference is a joint conference. This is the second time they've done it, so it was called Permissionless 2. It was in Austin, Texas last week. And, it was interesting because they use the Austin Convention Center, which is a very large convention center. It's kind of the epicenter of the South by Southwest one. And so I don't know if they had a good deal on it, but basically they had the conference center all to themselves. But the attendance was nowhere near the size capable of filling up this massive venue. And so the main event was up on the fourth floor. The exhibits only occupied about, I'd say, maybe a quarter of the exhibit hall down on the first floor, and a good walk away, all within the very large convention center, were the 3 to 4 breakout rooms for the afternoon breakouts. And it was definitely different than ETH Denver. I mean, maybe ETH Denver is just unique by itself. It was very well organized. I give absolute props to the Bankless team and to the Blockworks team. I think Blockworks really did the heavy lift on it. That's kind of how they started, was as a crypto convention business. And then I think during COVID, when that didn't happen, they had to pivot to media. But, I give them credit for well-organized, incredible displays. They used, it seemed like all the vendors used a common booth vendor, so everything looked kind of very professional, very clean, organized, beautiful space in there. I took a number of photos of the booths to kind of give us some ideals for ETH Denver. I was surprised in a couple of things. It was certainly a multi blockchain. There was a strong presence by XRP, the Ripple folks. There was a presence by Solana, much more than I kind of anticipated. And I was surprised there was only a few protocols out of the maybe I'd say 100 or so booths that they might have had, or maybe not quite that number, but 60 booths or something like that they might have had. There was only a few of them I recognized. A couple of hardware wallets were there, but it was neat to see a couple of new ones that I was impressed with. And Kraken, being a major sponsor of the thing, had a really neat thing where they were, had their F1 car there, and there was two of them. I guess it's OK Data, the exchange, and Kraken, both were big sponsors of the F1 cars this year. So they kind of themed that. So that was kind of neat to see. The content was excellent. I thought the talks in the afternoon were Bankless quality talks. They'd selected really good speakers, so I enjoyed that. I haven't seen them put it online. I'm hoping they will. There's one that I'd highly recommend if you look at it, was the Bankless talk on Does Macro Matter? And like you, it was banks and investors talking about crypto. It was a little juxtaposition there to see folks from large investment and IRA, retirement management, ETF funds talking crypto. So that was took a little bit to get used to. That kind of threw it. But I very much enjoyed my panel here. Joining me on the panel was Jordan with StakeWise. They had Adrian, who is with Steakhouse, spelled like steak that you eat. They're a big advisor to the Lido DAO, so they were representing Lido. And then John, who is the lead for their staking product at Coinbase. And we just had an absolute time talking to these folks beforehand. They asked us to kind of get there an hour early, so we're all on time. We just started talking. We went up on stage, actually just continued our conversation. I felt bad for Joseph, who he's the vice president of EtherFi, and he was supposed to be our moderator, and I don't think we stayed on topic or on question the whole time. I think he eventually just threw his question cards down at one point, and we continued the conversation afterwards. So we just had a lot of fun. So, the vibe was there. It was a little odd in such a large venue that was maybe only 20% or, full. You kind of felt like you were in a large, voluminous, empty convention center most of the time. So that kind of put a little downer damp to it, I think. And there was a lot of talk with the regulators. One of the keynotes mentioned a couple of our one of our senators, one of our representatives in Congress, as well as, Hester Price from the SEC that was there. And that one was well attended. I think everybody made it up to the main room for that. So, and that one I think might be on YouTube already, but definitely look for it. I'd say if any of their content comes out on YouTube, it is the same level and quality as a Bankless episode. Maybe that's what they're going to do with it, release them slowly over time. But the presentations were worth attending, but the overall event kind of just didn't have the vibe and energy that ETH Denver did. And I think it was because everybody I was talking to said, "Oh, the lucky people on the team, they all went to Singapore." So I think you chose right, Mav.
Yeah, interesting. I guess on the topic of the panel, that's always good when you have some kind of genuine organic discussion instead of just questions and answers back and forth. So at least that sounded good, and yeah, I think it was a good call to come to Singapore. Slight tangent here. Obviously, I mentioned I'm flying out tomorrow. I'm actually heading up to New York, so I'm going to be just based up there for maybe 3 weeks or so, and then make my way back across to Istanbul. So I know some of the community members are based in New York. If anyone is in town, let me know, and we can meet up for a beer or something to eat. It's my first time in New York, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I'll kind of be joining Joe in working evenings on Australia time. But yeah, the next community call next week, I will be tuning in from the US. So yeah, that's going to be great.
Oh man, that's really exciting. Yeah, you should definitely try to meet up with a number of folks there. So maybe let me ask you a little bit more questions about the upcoming conferences and so forth there. I know you mentioned already DevConnect. What can you tell us about that? There's a number of things going on in Istanbul, but what is, who from the team is going? What is the team doing? Are you going to do a Rocket Con there? Are you presenting? I don't know. Do they have booths at DevConnect? I've never been.
I have not been either, and this is one of a few things that we've kind of been chatting about, especially Langers and I yesterday, catching up on a few different topics, events, governance, etc. So for Istanbul, there are a couple of things going on, kind of like Singapore, really. We have, I guess, first of all, the ETH Staker meetup as part of DevConnect. So that's a couple of days kind of towards the start of DevConnect. As I understand it, the way it works is it is more kind of DevConnect itself is more a loose umbrella term for a lot of separate events that take place in the same location as in within Istanbul, but in different venues at different times, and attendees can kind of choose what they want to attend rather than like a single conference venue like permissionless and mainnet and token and all that. So we have confirmed that we will be sponsoring the eStaker event. There are one or two others where we getting a little bit late now, but we still have to sort out our level of participation, including the staking reward staking summit. We also have to sort out flights and accommodation. So at the very least, the eStaker meetup is locked in. You asked who's attending. That's still a bit up in the air. I know it won't be the full team. Obviously, Joe again will have potentially a bit of a difficulty getting out of the country. So for him, it's probably not a worthwhile trip. I think for some of my Australian colleagues as well, they may be staying behind for either just personal reason, having other things planned, or to get through some of the work to keep kind of the wheels turning while Istanbul's going on. So it is highly likely that I will be there, and probably two, maybe three others, but not the whole contingent this time around. It is kind of far from Australia as well, like most places. But yeah, at least for me, assuming that I do make it there, which I'm pretty sure will happen, it'll be certainly a lot easier for me to get in from already being up in the Northern Hemisphere. But yeah, be good to catch up with. I think there are a few community members attending. So we talked about potential side events. I'm not sure if it will happen for Istanbul. But yeah, there's still a couple of things we have to sort out. So hopefully, well, it is certainly going on the list for next week once everyone is back kind of post-travel, and we'll start clearing through a bit of the backlog. That includes Istanbul. But yeah, it is approaching pretty soon. So hopefully the next couple of, or probably the next time you're on, Ken, we'll have a lot more answers and information about that.
Yeah, I bet it's about 58 days away, so it is coming up, and certainly let the community know if the team needs any help doing anything. So I know there'll be a lot of community members there in Istanbul. I think everybody's looking forward either to that staking summit or the eStaker talk, as well as some of the other side events that are going there. It's a little kind of hard on the schedule because there's so many happening on the same days. You kind of have to pick and choose where you want to be. It's a little frustrating that way because you know, you kind of want to be in multiple places. But if the team needs any help, just definitely reach out to the community. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that would be very willing to help.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Ken. Also, apologies in advance if not already. I think my audio might be playing up, so bear with me on that. Hopefully, it's not too bad on your end.
Nope, you're sounding loud and clear here. Maybe as we move on, I know it's still a little bit of ways out, but I know you've been thinking about it. Is ETH Denver? Anything right now you want to share about ETH Denver, or other than it's just on the roadmap and we'll get there?
Well, we're certainly still intending to attend and sponsor, probably to a similar extent that we did last time. We'll put it this way, we will definitely need a booth of a similar, if not larger size, based on the turnout earlier in the year. So that, I think, is something that we certainly see as worthwhile. It may not be the easiest place to get to from Brisbane, again, many such cases, but certainly in terms of the ability of everyone else being, community DAO members, and to get everyone in one place, we think is very valuable. So the way it happens maybe might be a little bit different in terms of what we're planning. That is still all in the works though. But yeah, I'm certainly getting the messages from the organizers about confirming sponsorship and all of that. So kind of hard to believe that that's already rolled back around. Once Istanbul's out of the way, that's obviously going to be next on the list. So it's going to be busy few months planning and attending events.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping maybe the team might get there a day or two earlier than they did last time, and maybe we can find a side venue and do a Rocket Con, maybe a whole day just about advances in Rocket Pool and the roadmap ahead. Have a number of the dev team and some of the more prominent rocket scientists present on some of their work. It seems like there's just a tremendous amount going on, and that might be a good opportunity if the majority of the team's there to call out some special special presentations and venues.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah. So now, tell me a little bit here as we kind of look forward back on the protocol here, right? Langers has released, a tentative roadmap, at least on the DAO forum website, that talked a little bit about Houston and Saturn. Any updates on that in terms of potential release dates or refinement about what's in Houston or not in Houston? Any thoughts about that, or has it all been in real life conference stuff?
Yeah, I feel like my answer to your following questions will be somewhat similar in that we have really been full on here in Singapore, wanting to make the most of our time. And as that kind of draws to a close, we'll be pivoting back to day-to-day tasks, I suppose. For me, at least, it's just been a case of trying to kind of keep my head above water over the past couple of weeks. And now, once I am up in New York, I will be clearing through my backlog. I'm sure Langers will be the same. We, as I understand it, do have date locked in for audits for Houston. I think a lot of this will be included into the Promise Roadmap Medium article, which is still being worked on by Dave and Langers. But yeah, I think here there's a bit of soon TM in terms of replies. But I guess the good thing is that there will be a lot of content coming out in the next couple of weeks in terms of there's some governance items to action, roadmap planning content, some of this website work that's being done and planned through events. So maybe not so much to share on this call right now, but as we do clear through that, it could be potentially a few busy weeks to come.
I'm guessing the answer to this might be soon on these things, but just we'll kind of do speed round here of questions. When the team dev hires? I think you're still on mute there, Mav.
Okay, sorry, I think I clicked it one too many times. That is a very good question. I think that is also soon TM. I'm just trying to think back to what the latest update there was, whether like a contract was sent out or something along those lines. It did sound like it was in that final stage, although at the same time, I feel like that's been the case for at least a couple of weeks now. So, maybe, as I tend to say on these calls, once Langers is on next week for the bi-weekly update, we can go into that in a little bit more detail then, and hopefully he has something to share.
Yeah, we're gonna have to pin him down. And trading's not yelling at me, so I don't think I missed it while I was at Austin. It's hard to pay attention to the conference and Discord at the same time. Next question: when the updated website?
So there was talk about doing something around Singapore. Let me put it this way. I think because we're talking about a little bit more than just the website with this, I mean, I'm not going to call it a rebrand, kind of a brand refresh is probably a good way of saying it. That flows into certain other areas too, like the kind of graphics that we use on Twitter for the YouTube videos, on Discord. I mean, small things, but there are kind of a few pieces to put together. I think it would be a good idea to kind of launch all of this in one go, as it were, in somewhat of a big bang. So thinking about the best time to do this with the most impact, probably somewhere around Assemble makes sense. So yeah, just trying to work through that timeline wise. Obviously, that'll also be around the time where a lot of the work for Houston will be quite advanced, maybe kind of approaching audit. So there'll be some stuff to talk about, that's for sure. But it's certainly something that's been, as we know, in the works for a long time. Again, many such cases, but I think everything's looking pretty good, and I'm quite keen to get this out. Between now and then, I think at some point we do have to do a little bit of a tease, a sneak peek, leak something out. So that might be coming at some point. But otherwise, more just trying to figure out the best time to push the green button on all of this.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, a little got to throw the dog a bone here. Lastly, as we kind of reach our concluding kind of topics here before we open it up for open items, you touched a little bit upon the governance items coming up, and it seems like there's a number of key things that are being lined up. I think the biggest one, if people haven't been paying attention, is a pending vote. I don't think it's been released yet or proposed yet on the snapshot, but I guess there's been a little bit of confusion about who has voting rights. Is it those that hold effective RPL only above 10%, or is it staked RPL between 0 and 150%, I think is kind of the thing. And as we look back through the historical records and conversations, it was confusing at best. And so I think the approach that the community is looking at is to just vote it both ways, with both voting designs in place, and see if there's a consensus about which way it should be voted on. Is that kind of your understanding of it as well too?
Yeah, pretty much. I do know that this is something that's very high on Lang's priority list, so we should be seeing some traction on it once he gets back to Australia, i.e. next week. I do recall it being mentioned in trading once or twice, just as this call was getting underway, I think maybe from Berdolf and someone else. So yeah, rest assured that is very much on the radar. We should hope to be able to get a follow-up update from Langers pretty shortly. I mean, governance in general also has been quite busy. The number of kind of new posts and comments on the DAO governance forum every time I pop in, it's pretty impressive, especially I guess in the context of some of the discussions we've been having here in Singapore about crypto, about DAOs, about governance. Usually quite a contrast if you pop into the Rocket Pool forum and see the types of discussions that are happening compared to elsewhere. I think it's pretty impressive, really, to be honest. And we could talk about in this space governance and decentralization and DAOs a lot. Rocket Pool is one of, I believe, only a small handful of cases where it's kind of demonstrated quite well. So yeah, busy times for Rocket Pool governance.
Yeah, and I would definitely support the idea of trying to get that the kind of twin vote on who has voting rights in there, because I know that Val, shout out to Val here for all the work that you've been doing in the protocol, but I know there's got to be at least 3 or 4 other votes that are kind of queued up that are all dependent upon that first vote going. I know there's wants to be an adjustment in the proration between the GMC and the IMC to kind of countercorrect some of the earlier distributions that I don't think had followed the exact formula. There was a great proposal by both Val and Nashua on tokenomics. This is the kind of more complex one that seems to be maturing and moving its way towards an eventual RPIP and vote on there. And I was kind of thinking there was probably maybe 1 or 2 more in there, but like you said, it's quite a lot of activity, and I know once they come, they'll come pretty quick in succession here.
That's the one.
Any other things, Mav, as we just open it up to questions in the community? Any bread you can share with us for topics that we didn't cover?
Not much in the way of bread, really. I will, of course, call out the upcoming community calls. We have 2 more loaded in as events in Discord, so those guests and times are pretty much confirmed. So check that out. I know recently we've been kind of booking a few of these last minute and having changes with guests unable to make the call. So hopefully this is a shift back to the ability to plan out in advance, and people can schedule in their calendars to tune in. Other than that, not much in the way of bread, unfortunately.
I was going to say, any thoughts about the chit chats and adding those back into the schedule here?
Actually, I was thinking about this in the context of being in New York. I'm not sure if any people would be interested, but if there was kind of a few of us from the community in one place, whether we could kind of expand that into Discord and jump on a chit chat at some point. But yeah, no, you raise a good point, and those should definitely come back, I think. I'll make a note. But yeah, if you've just tuned in and you are in the New York area, let me know. And yeah, I'll be there for a little while, and maybe we can grab a beer and or something to eat.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun for those that are in the New York area or the tri-state area. It could be a lot of fun, and I for one would very much look forward to just a regular chit chat in the Discord here. It's always kind of fun to hear what the rest of the community is thinking, and certainly with ETH Denver coming up, it's we think it's a ways away, but it will come very fast, and I get a sense that there's a lot of interest in it this year, and so kind of having our plans in place well ahead of that, I think, are going to be essential to kind of pulling that one off. And I will be out at Istanbul, so I'm looking forward to meeting a number of people from the community there. I'm looking forward to both events, and if you haven't seen the speaker lineup for the East Staker Istanbul one, it looks really great. There's just some people I've really wanted to meet. They have Danny Ryan, Justin Drake, Alex Stoke, who's one of the Ethereum researchers. It's really focused on some of the staking issues and has a couple of very interesting EIPs that I think will be very advantageous for Rocket Pool. And then another individual who I've been very pleased with, Jim McDonald, who Ben Ellington is just an expert in kind of ETH staking and has written a lot of documents and seems to know all the very technical answers. So if you want to geek out a little bit on staking, I think DevConnect in Istanbul would certainly be one to look at, especially if in Europe. It should be a fairly economical flight, and looks like it's a fairly low cost destination to go to.
On the topic of speakers, I think, did you share it in trading earlier this morning, Ken? I saw something about there was a podcast or interview with I can't remember, was it Danny Ryan? It was one of the researchers, right?
Yeah,
talking about staking.
Yeah, with Danny Ryan and kind of the concerns of systematic risk by having too much of a majority protocol staking, right? And it was by Web3 Builders that did it. I haven't had a chance to look at it. It's on my playlist, but a couple of people in the community have replied back saying it was excellent. So it's definitely on my to watch. Maybe I'll even get to it tonight if I can get everything done.
Okay, awesome. I might see if I can grab that for the flight tomorrow, and I'm sure the Rocket Pool intern, if they haven't already, will be kind of retweeting that out. So if you're unsure where to find it, that might be the easiest way.
Yep. And Dr. D is saying definitely people should watch it. So thank you, Dr. D, for that.
Always great commentary from and insights from Dr. Doofus.
He says we should also listen to it too, but
nice.
All right. Well, Mav, it has been an absolute pleasure. I might have to find a way to get me transcontinental out to New York to meet up with you there. I'm jealous for anybody in the area that's there, and you might even be close enough to Joe out there, and that would be pretty neat for both of you two to meet up. But yeah, well, welcome to America for a little bit, and if not, I'll hope to see you maybe in Istanbul.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. It's good to chat again after. Feels like a long time anyway. It's probably just 2 weeks, but yeah, again, not to belabor the point. It's been pretty busy here in Singapore, and yeah, I don't really have much planned in the way of New York, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to meet up with people both there and in Istanbul. And you are right about Denver; it's going to come around pretty quickly, especially with Christmas, New Year in between. We're going to get finished up with Singapore, straight into Istanbul, and then before we know it, it's going to be in the snow in Denver again, which I'm really looking forward to. And
it's not like you have to launch Houston, go through Deneb, and then Saturn, right? So I think it's going to be pretty busy and pretty exciting here.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Lots to look forward to.
Yeah. All right, Mav. Well, have a safe journey on your flights. Get some sleep, and we'll chat to you later on in the weeks ahead.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, Ken. And thanks to everyone for listening in. We'll catch you on the next call.